follow the greetings. We are going to be reading again The Wounded Heart. And last time we were here, we were reading part 4B, and it was chapter 4. It's kind of weird the way they do it, but it says like part 2. Oops, I just broke my leaf. Whoopsies. Anyways, we were on part 1, now we're on part 2, but it's still technically like chapter 5, I think it's gonna be called. Yeah, because then like the next page shows 5, and yeah, so however they're doing this, it gets kind of confusing because then I have to do part 1s and 2s and Bs and 3s and whatever if I don't finish a whole chapter in one setting, because I talk a lot in between. But I also want to give like commentary and my thoughts, not just boringly read a book, because I'm not that great of a reader and it's not that smooth and it's not very ASMR, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like, I can't even believe I'm doing this, honestly, and I don't know if I'd want to listen to myself. So sorry about that. But anyways, here we go. Part 2, the damage of abuse. Yeah, we're just going to dive right into it. Like, why do we need a long intro?
Oh no.
And sorry, I haven't posted in a while. We've had lots going on, and spring break, and kids, and dogs, and husbands, and everything like that. It keeps me very busy. So I do still care about the movement, and I really want to just be informative and help people heal and learn and grow. For all the victims, I want them to be able to come forward and get justice if at all possible. For anyone who is abusing, I hope that justice is served upon them in the harshest manner. And then for all the people that are kind of like the sideliners and the pastors that maybe did or didn't do anything, we want them to be educated. We want them to learn and grow, because sadly, well, I don't know if it's sadly, but pastors will still exist and IFB churches will still exist. We can't, just ice age them all. So we need them to learn and grow and do better, because like I say, they're going to be there. They're going to exist. They're going to have churches. We're going to have places to worship. I don't want to get rid of that. We just want it. And I mean, we, as in all the blind-eyed people, we want the places that you worship or places that you go to school to actually be safe for kids. We want everyone to feel safe, and we want you to be aware that these things are happening. So churchgoers, pastors, all the leaders, we want you to be aware that abuse is happening, and that you just might not realize it. You might not see it right away, but if you do see it, you got to do something about it. We have to help it cease. We have to help it be at least less than it used to be, not so high in the numbers of abuse cases as they are right now. So anyways, so much for like getting into it right away. My bad. We're getting into it right now. Yeah. Anyways, 3 minutes later. Ooh. Okay. So chapter 5, powerlessness. As we scrutinize each element of the damage done to the soul by sexual abuse, a magnification may occur for a brief period, making the effect appear larger and hopelessly overwhelming. 2 reminders are necessary before we proceed. True hope never minimizes a problem in order to make it more palatable and easily managed. For the Christian, hope begins by recognizing the utter hopelessness of our condition and the necessity of divine intervention. We are to experience joy, any personal change that can be achieved solely through human in contrast to supernatural. What? Let me read that again. Okay. Any personal change that can be achieved solely through human in contrast to supernatural intervention will neither satisfy nor change our heart. A proper focus on the deep wound is therefore neither negative nor does it promote despair. Rather, it sets the stage for the dramatic work of God. A second reminder involves the danger of myopia. The danger of myopia. The danger of myopia. Never heard that word in my life. If one looks through a microscope too long at one group of cells, it is possible to develop tunnel vision. In this chapter, we will focus on the experience of powerlessness, but there are other factors involved in the damage that include but go beyond the experience of feeling helpless and focus narrowly on one aspect, we run the danger of limiting perspective and creating the illusion that one part of the damage is more severe or significant than the other, or that one aspect of the damage functions in isolation from the other elements. In fact, the damage can be described in terms of powerlessness, betrayal, and ambivalence only if we understand that all three aspects of the damage function together in one tumultuous river that rages through the soul, tearing away hope, faith, and love. In order to take a close look at the river, we will travel further upstream to examine the source of each separate stream. Our look at each stream will expose the abuse in terms of its cause, cost, consequence, and core image. In other words, how did the damage occur? What are the internal repercussions of the damage? What are its external results? And how will the victim see himself or herself as a result of the damages or the damage? The cause of powerlessness. It may be obvious, but to most abused people, it is not clear. Abuse strips a person of the freedom to choose. SA was never wanted nor invited, therefore its occurrence was not a choice. If the abuse occurred one time or hundreds, the fact does not change to the degree that choice was denied. Powerlessness was experienced and dignity was assaulted. There are at least three forces that cause a sense of powerlessness: the inability to change the dysfunctional family the inability to stop the abuse, and the inability to end the relentless pain in the soul. The emptiness of the home. I am continually amazed how often someone who was abused will begin by telling me they had a happy childhood, or how richly loved they felt by their mother and father, even though the history indicates that nothing could be further from the truth. A child would rather have a bad percent. I'm dumb. A child would rather have a bad parent than no parent. Ain't that the truth? That's so sad. Like, ugh. It's terrible. And even more would rather be a bad kid than face the wickedness of the parent he is dependent upon. How is a child to survive if he fully admits that his life is in the hands of someone who will neither protect him against harm nor provide for his legitimate relational desires? The denial of the emptiness is further fostered by an absence of comparison. How is a child to know what she is missing if she has nothing else to compare it to? In most cases, the relational emptiness is all the child ever knew, and so it is viewed as acceptable, if not normal. Proverbs 27:7 states the dilemma well. A sated man loathes honey, but to a famished man, any bitter thing is sweet. The NASB. For a child who is humiliated at the dinner table every night, to be merely ignored may be a relief, in fact a joy. Or when a child is often forced to participate in oral, to be merely fondled seems minor and expected. For real, like that's why like the whole trunk situation for me was like, well, whatever, at least, it was the second of him not kissing me, I guess. I don't know, some things just seem like not that big of a deal when you're so used to things that are a really big deal, and then you just kind of like have to cope with them, and you sort of get numb to the crazy, and then you just like are so looking forward to something that seems less crazy or less painful or less emotional or scary and stuff. So I totally get this. And just a reminder, because I can feel the elephant in the room of all of you who have, been abused, especially in IFB churches. If I feel like this elephant in the room that I may be talking about God, and like it may be so triggering that you just totally cut me off and like I'm not gonna listen to this. But what I just want you to try to do is keep an open mind that I'm not reading this as an IFB or as like hardcore Christian. I am reading this as a victim of abuse within those circles, and I'm trying to learn for myself, but I want you to learn with me, because the whole goal and the whole point of healing is so that you can live a productive, happy life, even though you went through something terrible. And that's kind of where I'm trying to get to, and where I've hopefully come and or come to, instead of staying in the sadness and the darkness and the depression and the feeling paralyzed in your situation, because we were all once there. All of us who were abused, I'm sure, I mean, I'm speculating that all of us were in some sort of fashion of flavor of this darkness and this sadness and just the oppression of being abused, you know? So we all just want to get, like, I feel like we could all collectively have the same goal, and don't read too deeply into, because like I said, I don't know this bro that wrote this, and he could be totally wrong, and we are just trying out this book to see if it helps us at all. And then I would like to move on to another one, and maybe it has nothing to do with God, maybe it does, I have no idea. But our goal should be a mutual, like, hey, we're all just trying to heal together by whatever means, and everyone's gonna feel differently, everyone's gonna heal differently, and in their own timing. I'm just here to, like, be with you. Okay. Let's move on. Routine becomes a child's definition of normal, even if the normal is bizarre, abusive, or evil. For that reason, it may take years, if not decades, for a person to fully see her world from the vantage point of what could and should have transpired, which totally makes sense. We are so terribly reluctant to imagine the horror of an event when it is so easy to cloud the pain by seeing it as just the way it is. Consequently, many children and adults are not aware of how much energy they spent on trying to change a world that was viewed as normal, but was internally experienced with disease and emptiness. Essay being schmexual abuse, never begins at the point of the first S contact. It begins in the matrix of some level of emotional neglect, role distortion, harshness, coldness, rigidity, and fear-induced loyalty. In most cases, the family prior to the abuse was a festering sore where disease and emptiness were a normal part of life. But the normal abnormalcy of the family is at odds with the child's innate God-designed desire for stability, intimacy, and respect. The child may learn to accept the wretched harm of the abuse as normal, but a quiet inner voice will at some point begin to whisper strange but true words. It's not right for mom to let this occur. Dad should not be touching me this way. I wish our family was loving and happy like my friend's home. For real. Like, did you ever, like, go to someone's house and you're like, this is definitely not like my life. Like, it just, no offense, but, like, or I don't know, you just see, or the thing that always got me was watching, like, a father and daughter and being like, is that how it's supposed to be? Like, that's kind of weird. And my situation didn't happen by my father. It was by a father figure. So then everything with, like, father, dad, daddy, all that was, like, so ruined for me until I became an adult and, like, had to, like, work through all that. Because, yeah. And, like, and then it makes it hard to raise children because you're like, I don't know how to do it without it feeling wrong or gross or weird or awkward. And you're just like, I don't know how to be in my own body, you know? So I am sorry for all of you guys and all of you kids that were abused by your actual parents, because that is such a huge betrayal. Like, I would much rather it have been outside of my family, just because, like, being a child is hard enough. Growing up is hard enough. Being a parent now is hard enough without such a damaging distortion of you. Distortion. Don't mean to bring, like, Ruby and Jody into this. But, if you follow that true crime case. But anyways, yeah, I am really sorry for all of you that had to go through that, because it's disgusting and it's a huge type of betrayal that's just so wrong on so many levels. So anyways, not saying that it's better to be, like, abused by, like, a stranger, but in that perspective, in my head, it is. But like, that's just my own opinion. Don't get mad at me. The seeds of disconnect are the first fruits of awakened desire. Sadly, the seeds often fall on a rocky soil and are eaten by the wolves of doubt and self-contempt. The initial seeds of disconnected desire often stir a hunger for more and an equal pressure to find some means to perform, well enough to see the dream of a happy family come true. The desire for change is a mixed blessing. It both opens the door to a taste of hope and binds the child's soul to the pernicious whims of the family. The child becomes a prisoner to the hope that something can be done to lift mom's spirits or to keep dad from being enraged. The passionate desire to see the family change energizes the child to pursue academic, athletic, social, or religious excellence. The result, irrespective of success or failure, is deeper disappointment that the mom or dad did not change. The reason for their lack of the change is always assumed to be the failure of the child. If only I had worked a little harder, maybe the coach would have let me play on the first team. If only I had more outgoing smile, maybe I would have been invited to the prom by one of the wealthier boys. If I had succeeded well, then maybe dad would not need to abuse me, or maybe mom would be nicer to dad, and life would be better. The impossibility of being enough to change a dysfunctional family leads to the initial experience of powerlessness. The subtle demands of the needy parent, who has often assigned the child an adult role, adds to the sense of ill-fated child omnipotence. A child who has been labeled as mom's little helper or dad's special girl is trapped in an adult role that the child cannot possibly fulfill, but one that must be accomplished if hope is to be realized. What an awful bind. A child is given the keys to the kingdom, the power to please and bring change, and then at some point realizes she is not tall enough to even fit the key into the lock that towers above her. Slowly, the child faces the fact that no matter how good she is, how gifted, intelligent, musical, social, and competent, it is not enough to change the intractable emptiness of her family. The helplessness of SA. A second deep well that pours out water for the violent stream is the impossibility of stopping abuse once it has begun. Abuse is either an unplanned, sudden event that occurs because a person was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or a carefully constructed setup that was organized for optimum secrecy and ease. In either case, the victim could not have known what was going to occur. There was no way to stop the assault. The victim was not given an option, time to reflect, perspective on the issues involved in the abuse, or the opportunity to seek the help of another in making a choice about involvement. In other words, the assault in either the sudden, unplanned attack or the well-orchestrated seduction stole the opportunity to choose. Whether physical pain is experienced or not, the violation of the body and soul leads to a sense of being small, helpless, and alone. So true. Furthermore, once the abuse has occurred, the abuser often uses threat or shame to silence the victim. The fear of being burned to death or sent to an orphanage would understandably keep almost anyone mute. Violence, however, is not the only weapon used to weaken the victim's voice. Shame is just as effective a tool. The threat of even more exposure and humiliation increases a sense of hopelessness. Now, I could definitely second that being afraid of like losing your family, losing your church, losing your home, or getting that other person in trouble is enough fear to keep you quiet as a kid, because it kept me quiet for sure. Like, I felt so guilty. Like, he was afraid that I would tell on him. Like, my abuser was afraid that I would tell on him. So even when it just came to like a hug, I wasn't allowed to say that to anyone, like that was going on, even like friends and stuff. And because I was already so scared of even letting that out of the bag, like when it got worse and worse and worse, I was like, well, I definitely can't say that. Definitely can't say about that. Like, if just a hug would get him in trouble and get me like kicked out of my house, then like, of course, I'm not gonna say anything about the other stuff. So it wasn't even like, oh, I got tied up or I had a gun to my head or whatever. It didn't need to be that violent to be really, really scary, you know? And I think that's where, like, when you're an adult and you're like hearing about these situations, you're like, bro, you were 15, 16, 17, 18. How did you not just like run up to someone and be like, hey, this is going on? And he doesn't got a gun in my head, so I could just tell someone on the street or tell my family or friends or whatever. But it's just not that simple. Like, it's almost like being in a plastic bag over your head of fear. And no matter how much you want to, you just can't breathe and you just can't speak. And it's like, yeah, that's like a good analogy in my head. Like, there's a plastic bag around you. Nobody can hear you screaming because it's all inside. Nobody can see your facial expressions quite the right way. And you just can't reach anybody. You can't reach out because the fear is suffocating you and you're slowly dying inside. So, yeah. Good times. Just kidding. So, anyways, I have to laugh stuff off because, like, I can't get too deep, probably, and I don't want to do that. So, I use humor instead. Okay. The relentless pain of the soul. The two previous forces can be viewed as an inability to change a system family and an inability to stop the abuser. In both cases, the inability involves something outside the soul. The third factor, however, is an interpersonal and external, but personal and internal. It involves the victim's inability to stop his or her own soul from bleeding. So deep. The absence of deep involvement is exponentially magnified by SA. The heart aches, and there is no immediate resource for relief, except the soul-numbing choice to abandon a sense of being alive. What a terrible choice. If the victim wants to live free of the pain, then she must choose not to be alive. Oh, it makes me want to cry because, like, it's just... Ugh. One woman said, it was as if the abuse flushed rancid sewage into her home, which could not be tolerated unless she destroyed her sense of smell. Although a victim may choose to kill the part of her soul that feels pain, the grace of God renders her unable to The grace of God renders her unable utterly to destroy her own or anyone else's intuitive sense of being. She cannot entirely wipe out the pain, no matter if she opts for catatonia, multiple personalities, amnesic forgetfulness, or hyper-spiritual denial. The remnant of pain alternately mocks and soothes the victim's heart. I am in pain, and I am not in control. I am alive. I am not a mechanical automaton. The pain persists and cannot ultimately be altered by efforts to escape. The essence of all three forces of powerlessness, the family, the abuser, and the pain, is the inability to escape or change the ravaging consequences of living in a fallen world. Every day we are assaulted by forces of evil, injustice, selfishness, and abuse as a normal course of living with sinful people in a fallen world. When the pretense that the good life is a matter of hard work and fair play is stripped away through victimization, we are faced with the awful fact of how little, if anything, is in our direct control. Powerlessness, the inability to redirect the family heartache, stop the physical touch of the abuser, or silence the hollow screams inside the heart, is a reality that is endemic to all humankind, but is faced by few. We are all helpless, but only those We are all helpless, but only those who have been radically deprived of the inherent freedom to choose and the legitimate desire to redirect that which is wrong will know how truly powerless we are in every endeavor that matters the most to us. Powerlessness is no gift, but the consequences of facing our helplessness as victims of abuse, and even more as sojourners in a world that is not our own, can open the door to new vistas of power, and a radical taste of what it means to be free. The cost of being powerless. The experience of powerlessness need not destroy or damage the soul. However, in most, if not all cases, profound helplessness leads to deep scars and wounds. Oh, my widow clover. I have a little clover in the book, apparently. Not just a giant leaf. We'll just stick you back somewhere over there. What was I saying? Okay. Wounds. The internal damage follows the path of doubt, desire, and deadness. Self-doubt is common when our efforts fail to bring results. Failure is a rock in our shoe that nags us until we find relief. At first, failure to achieve our desired end will elicit careful scrutiny. What can I do better? And resumed commitment. How can I try harder? Success may be achieved straight as an athletic scholarship, perfect Sunday school attendance, but the real goal of happy family, an end to the abuse, or relief from the pain is always out of reach. The natural result will be a severe and unlikely contemptuous question as to what is wrong with us. Why can't I run faster, or sing better, or be more perfect? The self-doubt opens the door to despair. And girl, was I insecure. I mean, I still am, but I had so much doubt about myself. Just side note. The result of continued frustration, labor that fails to reach the carrot at the end of the stick, is learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is an orchestrated retreat that has learned to give up before one even tries, because there is no point to pursue an objective that is doomed to fail before ever begun. Ain't that the truth? Imagine being unjustly locked in a dark cell. After being put in the cell, you might shout, cry, plead, threaten, and beg until your voice gave out. You might check to see if there's a way out. When it is clear there is no exit and no one will hear you or rescue you, all hope of change is abandoned. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. See Proverbs 13:12. And we'd rather not feel ill, therefore we abandon hope. Then we can live without a nauseous heart. I was nauseous every single day in high school. Every single day. I would also be humming a lot, which was annoying to everyone. I annoy myself. But yeah, singing was like my happy place, so I'd just be humming in the hallway, also feeling nauseous every day, not knowing why. And it was just my situation. It's making me literally sick. Despair is a protective blanket that shields the soul against the cold demands of harsh self-doubt. Depression is the middle ground between the pressured energy to change and the total abandonment of hope. Those who abandon hope deaden their soul by cutting off the parts of it that still feel rage, pain, and desire, and exiting those parts to the furthest reaches of the unconscious. At times, the choice is as conscious as the taking of an oath. One woman recalled a commitment she made during the time her uncle flirted with her. If I don't feel anything, he will stop. He didn't stop, but only intensified his verbal intrusions by making comments about her developing body. She deepened her commitment. If I never feel anything, at least he will never have the pleasure of seeing me respond. From that point on, she became an ice maiden, an unfeeling automaton who exiled her soul into a subarctic region of denial. Her deadness was a hunger-induced commitment to lose her soul rather than hurt anymore. She described herself as a person who left her porch lights on, but was never home. She smiled and feigned involvement, but no one was ever invited into her empty soul. She was never at home in herself. Sad. Because of the way God has made us, it is impossible finally and completely to deaden the soul. The soul will resurrect in spite of the cruelty used to destroy it. It will pop up and then be slain again, return and be shoved down through contempt. The power to destroy the soul is not in the hands of Satan, another human being, or even oneself. Nevertheless, when we manage to deaden our soul, even temporarily, we open the door to terrible consequences. The consequences of being powerless. The experience of powerlessness is almost always damaging. The external consequences of the doubt, despair, and deadness set into motion a process that eventuates most often in broken relationships and further re-victimization. When we feel profoundly helpless, we can lose our sense of pain, which in turn leads us to the loss of a sense of self and inevitably results in a loss of judgment and wisdom. The process can be deadly. Loss of a sense of pain. Pain is a gift. We may not welcome it when it intrudes in our life, but imagine that would occur if we never felt pain. Imagine what would occur if we never felt pain. Dr. Paul Brand, a renowned physician who studied and treated leprosy for many years, found that the disease destroyed its victims by numbing their nerve endings. The progressive deadening of the nerve sensations permitted the leper to put his hand or foot into dangerous situations of extreme heat, cold, or harm without awareness. The disease indirectly destroys a person by deadening his awareness of pain. The obvious parallel to our spiritual condition and life is a marvelous metaphor that brings perspective and honor to the experience of suffering. A abused person often forfeits the experience of pain by a process of splitting, denial, and loss of memory. Splitting involves a process of segmenting memories and feelings into separable categories of good or bad. The categories of the self as all good or all bad is then intensified by the construction of a huge barricade between the two. It is not possible for the person to see errant motives in her good self or legitimate desire or even honorable intention in her bad self. The two are separated by an iron curtain. On one side exists all the lust, vengeance, hate, and hunger of the soul, and on the other side, all the love, forgiveness, and warmth. If feelings from the dark side are expected, they must be either denied or embraced in an orgy of compulsion. The binge eater hates herself, but periodically allows for a break in her good self routine by a few minutes of oral debauchery. She knows she must pay the price of shame and contempt, but even that is a small price since the self-hatred adds another layer to the wall and more distance from the deeper pain inside. Splitting leads to a wall of denial. Denial separates the mind of the agony in the heart. It is the dividing wall between the good and the bad selves. Is it any wonder the internal struggle eventually leads to forgetfulness? The struggle of being powerless in the face of the overwhelming evil and emptiness is a titanic battle that seems best forgotten. The energy required to keep the iron wall of denial intact is costly and time-consuming. Therefore, it is common for the memories and feelings to be lost to the soul, blocked from retrieval rather than anguished over in a world that offers no help. As long as we are dead, we can't feel pain. If there's no one home to answer the door, then we don't have to feel disappointed when no one knocks for us. But what else happens when the experience of pain is lost? Simply stated, when we abandon pain, we lose a sense of being intact and alive. Yes, I think all of us, I mean, I guess I won't speculate on everyone, but definitely me. And I don't mean to like just talk about myself, but I don't want to like also put words in everybody's mouth and then you'd be like, you don't know me. But I feel like all of us would have definitely had to do some sort of survival mode. And I agree that memories get so lost, and I still do struggle with memories. And I think it's literally my brain was just overworked to where I don't have the capacity to remember things because of how long my brain was in survival mode and scared mode, fear mode, just straight up surviving in this shaky shell of a person that now it's like I've exhausted all those brain cells that should have been used for good and good filing away of memories, but instead it was just like it's like all burned up. It's, I don't know, hard to explain, but that's what I feel like happened to my brain. I spent too many years trying to split things off and try to control all those feelings and emotions to where now it's like you kind of implode. Loss of sense of self. The contempt of the self is an intuitive rather than scientific notion. What is the self? The contempt of the self is an intuitive rather than scientific notion. What is the self? How do we define the word soul or self, or, for that matter, the idea of life? There is something inside us that provides continuity and cohesion to divergent experiences of life. I can recall going on a Boy Scout field trip to the governor's office. I wore shorts, a t-shirt, and a Davy Crockett coonskin cap. All my peers wore a shirt, a tie, and a suit. I was mortified, especially when we had our picture taken with the governor. As I recall that event nearly 25 years later, I can feel my face blush. I can see that awkward, pudgy, curly-haired boy as quite different from me, and yet I blush for him because I know it is me. But what is me? I have no idea. All I know is that I am connected to that boy. It is kind of weird. Like, you go through every decade. I was just talking to my husband about this. Like, every decade you go through like a whole nother lifetime, and it feels like you are so removed from that person because your age, your looks, your whatever, and it is very strange. So I can like totally see where he's coming from. And he is connected to a man I can see 25 years later from now who is the slow, overweight, balding man I will become as the years transpire. I am both body and soul. As some have written, I am an embodied soul or a sensual soul. The anatomy as to how I can be both physical and immaterial spirit is outside the realm of full comprehension, but my body is as much me as I know anything else to be. I am so much more than my body. Nevertheless, I am at least the totality of all that I have experienced in my body. Confused? Maybe that is partly God's intention. My being can never be defined outside relationship with God. I am an orphan child of Adam and an adopted child of the King. My identity and being find their beginning and end in something outside myself. But if I am numb to my hunger and thirst, I will never look outside of myself for meaning or life. Hunger and thirst, or better said, longing for relationship and impact, is our subjective link between the soul and the body. If we lose a sense of hunger and thirst, we equally lose a sense of the person we are. Consequently, the sense of selfhood that provides perspective and cohesion to life is lost. Sexually abused persons seem like strangers to their bodies. They don't like it. It is too big or too small. It is the enemy. It gets tired, hungry, aroused, or sick. Some abuse victims avoid touching their breasts or genitals if they think of themselves as persons at all. They tend to imagine themselves as souls inhabiting bodies that are more or less shells to be discarded gratefully at death. Likewise, sexually abused persons seem like strangers to their own soul and history. Many times the chronic patterns of lying or deceit common to abused persons arise because of a forsaken history that forces them to concoct a past and a present that has no connection to their abused soul. The consequence is not only a loss of the past, but also a loss of the ability to judge the present and plan for the future. The loss of a sense of judgment. All decisions involve the use of perspective. We cannot make a choice without the use of thought and feeling. What occurs when we make a choice without awareness of hunger and thirst, or a sense of self? We will continue to make decisions, but our energy will be defensive and self-serving, self-protective. Ultimately, all choices will be directly or subtly designed to keep our soul under wraps, and the past hidden behind a veil of shame. The tone of our life will be rigid and distant, elusive and uninvolved, no matter how kind or sweet our disposition. Careful scrutiny will show how a painless person's judgment is darkened by their lack of soul. For example, a woman who visited a new gynecologist felt this in his questions and clinical touch, a level of familiarity that she deemed inappropriate. She managed to nullify her initial assessment, however, by viciously assaulting herself with contempt for so crudely misjudging her competent physician. He's a good man. Whatever I'm feeling is typical of my crazy, perverse way of seeing things. Consequently, each subsequent appointment over the next 6 months only confirmed her wanton and despicable heart, because each time she felt his interest to be inappropriate. When he eventually raped her, and she was only more convinced that she had led him on, rather than appalled that his initial warmth and tender touch were a setup for later overt abuse. Her lack of a sense of pain self and her refusal to trust her own intuition made her unnecessarily vulnerable to a wicked man's physical attack. Distorted judgment is seen more often than not in the arena of relationships. An abused woman may be a trial lawyer, run a huge corporation, or be your surgeon, and make extremely competent judgments about her field of endeavor. In fact, in most cases, though it sounds macabre and cruel, I would prefer my lawyer to be obsessively perfectionistic, and the hard-driving, extremely competent SA victim makes a fine lawyer, surgeon, or CEO because of all her defensive energies are oriented to finding some domain that is under her control. She will not be powerless again. May she ever be on my side in the courtroom, but Lord help me if she is my neighbor, friend, or wife. Her deepest pain occurred in relationship, and it is in relationships that her judgment will most likely be distorted. Since she has played death to her pain in the past, she doesn't learn what hurts her. Therefore, she often unwittingly opens herself up to further victimization in the future. The cause of this relationship between abuse and victimization is not entirely clear. There are at least two significant factors. First, an empty and unsure person is an easy mark for those who are looking for illicit pleasure and gain, who is most likely to be gypped by the unscrupulous used car dealer, the knowledgeable, savvy buyer, or the frightened, innocent first-time shopper. Many abused persons seem to advertise their past victimization through naive, blind trust and through weakness that invites abuse. The unconscious signal sent is a loud invitation in an evil world that attracts wolves to an easy kill. I really feel this, because I just feel like most of my life it's like how did I fall for that? And why did I fall for that? And why did I let that person do that? Or, yeah, I walk around feeling really naive and silly most of the time. But I'm working on it, and I'm trying to be more confident and trying to be more sure of myself and trying to listen to myself when I see the red flags or when I don't feel like, I deserve to be treated a certain way. I try to handle it, but I do also want to be a good person and handle it with grace and not just fire back at everyone and be like, I will not tolerate that, and like be like a bully myself. I really want to try to have a happy medium and not go like completely the other direction, like not being like a little naive mouse, but also I don't want to be a roaring lion that bites everybody's heads off either. So it's really hard to have a balance. Especially because you're so full of like doubt, like, am I right? Am I wrong? Should I do this? Should I feel like this? I don't know. You do feel like you have blinders on in a way, like you don't really know the truth because of everything that happened, and it's really hard for you to make good, healthy decisions. So I definitely encourage all of you, like when you're having decision making or you're dating someone new, like bounce ideas off other people, because it really does help to have like a sounding board so that you can kind of know when you are correct, because someone can back you up and be like, no, that's valid, that's a good point, like listen to your instincts kind of thing. Otherwise you could just like go in circles in your head and then make bad decisions. So the cause of this relationship between abuse and re-victimization is not entirely clear. Okay, the second factor is more difficult to explain and understand. Abused men and women often entangle themselves in relationships with people who are not trustworthy, faithful, or loving. I've worked with a number of abused women who have been married and divorced several times, seduced and cheated out of large sums of money by men who are cut out of the same pattern. It is not uncommon for an abused woman to be enmeshed with men who cannot make decisions, do not desire intimacy, and defend their weaknesses with a distant defensiveness that occasionally erupts in rage. Why would this be a result of a loss of judgment? From the vantage point of shame, poor judgment can be understood as a result of not feeling worthy to be in a relationship with a truly loving man. That is 100% true, and I feel like that's why I married my first husband. I didn't think I deserved any better. I didn't realize I could stand up for myself. I didn't know how to. And I felt like I could save him because, like a good Christian girl, like, hey, once he gets saved and baptized, he'll become the man that he's supposed to be and be a good leader and be a good, faithful person. And I don't mean not faithful, like I don't think he was a cheater, but a good person in general and not so abusive. But I could not change him. To this day, I cannot change him, no matter how much I tried. And no matter how much I tried to change myself, nothing worked because it wasn't me. And I just didn't know that. From the vantage point of shame, poor judgment can be understood as a result of not feeling worthy to be in a relationship with a truly loving man. That seems easy and clear. It's from the side of contempt and self-hatred that the waters get murky. A woman who feels stripped of power in most of her important relationships feels out of control in relationships, particularly relationships in which her heart comes alive with the hope that love might touch her deadened soul. The ambivalence is great. Do I allow myself to hope deeply and therefore make my soul vulnerable to being crushed again if I am robbed of the love I so crave? Or do I settle for a relationship that touches more shallow parts, feels good, excites, and nourishes that for a short time, but will likely end in expected disaster? Who will provoke greater fear, a committed and loving man or an uncommitted and selfish man? The man who might truly offer a relationship will scar the abused woman far more than the unfaithful man. At least the uncommitted and uninvolved man is predictable, does not raise hopes too high, and hurts far less than the man who has the ability to deliver a quality relationship. The man capable of relationship not only provokes more fear, but is far less easy to control. This is a terrible struggle for the abused woman. She longs for a man who will take hold of her. On the other hand, she is terrified to be in a position of being in a position of being out of control. Her option is to often find a strong man who is in control, competent, and aggressive in his career. external strength, and too busy to deeply involve himself in a relationship with his family, no involvement, or to find a passive man who will give himself neither to his career nor strength, nor to his family, no involvement. In either case, the woman will not have to give up relational control. I'm going kind of long. Okay, we're almost over. I think I can get through a whole chapter this time. I just feel bad when it goes too long. I'm probably boring everyone to death. But, yeah. A weak, undependable man seems the perfect choice for a boyfriend or mate. He does not arouse the deepest passion of the heart, but he provides a taste of a relationship without ever requiring the woman to experience profound powerlessness. He provides evidence that she is not truly attractive and desirable. If she was, then why would he treat her so badly, intensifying her contempt, thus serving her by being a hired mercenary to put to death her hungry heart. She also has free rein to vent her untapped rage toward a weak and uninvolved man. The rage of being powerless finds a ready target in a man who does not challenge or threaten her lonely isolation and wounded heart. Poor judgment about relationships is common and predictable. The factors behind the loss of judgment involve a choice to forsake the soul, while still retaining a semblance of control over those who do not threaten the heart that is afraid to hunger and desire more. Powerlessness spawns a perspective about self, others, and God that is deeply entrenched and difficult to change. Core images related to powerlessness. When an abused person feels powerless, she internalizes an image of herself as profoundly inadequate. She deeply questions her ability, competence, and intelligence. The doubt that opened the door to desire and deadness centers on these questions. Why could I not stop the family emptiness, abuse, and heartache? Why did I not get better grades? Why did Dad like my sister more than me? Why did Mom always find fault with me? The questions of doubt center on the issue of failure. Failure at a task seems to imply inability, incompetence, or a lack of motivation. The abused woman will often see herself as mentally deficient. I have worked with men and women who have attained the highest level of proficiency in their field and yet view themselves as idiots. One woman always found a way of undercutting her academic achievements by blaming the ease of the exam. Later, when she was accepted at the Harvard Medical School, she excused her success as the result of a more lenient attitude toward women. Her election as chief resident at a prestigious hospital was rationalized as the result of her adequate organizational skills, which the other students never worked to achieve since they were too gifted and cerebral. It is utterly useless to encourage such a person to evaluate her God-given assets more realistically because the energy behind the deep doubt and hatred is not based on reality. The image of being without talent, mediocre, average, or worse is a self-serving, self-protective evaluation used for a purpose. It provides the victim with a contemptuous explanation for not being able to halt the pain. As long as she is unintelligent and mediocre in ability, she can explain both why she was powerless and hope that she can become more powerful through studying, improving her speaking skills, or listening more attentively. The contemptuous evaluation of ability and intelligence also serves to deaden pain and refocus attention away from what the abused person feels most powerless to do anything about, her hatred and rage. In summary, it is a good rule of thumb to listen to how people talk about their natural abilities, intelligence, and accomplishments. To get an initial assessment of the nature and intensity of their contempt, self-hatred in the area of intelligence or ability is often a result of an abusive past that the person was powerless to stop. The damage of abuse is not limited to powerlessness. Another deep wound is the experience of betrayal. The awful reality of being set up and used by the abuser and being unprotected by the non-offending parent or parents. Okay, that is getting me choked up. So that we finished the whole chapter 5. Yay. And my immediate reaction to myself is like, you're so dumb. How does it take you a whole hour to read a chapter? You know, and I feel like this was preaching to myself because I am so insecure, and I've basically made it like my career to hate myself. And it's really sad because then like I know my self-talk like out loud is probably damaging like my kids and my spouse and like everyone around me because I've always hated myself, and I don't even know if I really like hated myself. I think I just hated how weak I always was and how it definitely made me feel like I wasn't smart, and like how could I fall for things like what my teacher did, and how could I fall for what my ex-husband did, and how could I not care about myself enough or have the strength to leave sooner or to tell someone, and you know, how could I do that? So like, you know, ever since I was younger, it's like I just constantly make fun of myself or constantly hate myself and say out loud how like I'm smooth-brained, I'm stupid, I'm slow, and like part of that might be actually true, but the reasons that I am the way I am is because of, I mean, some of it could be just the way I was born. Some of it could be nature versus nurture, you know, all that stuff. And the things that happen to me, my brain functions a certain type of way. And I have definitely just, I guess, out loud hated myself. And I always feel like I'm on 600-pound life, even though that's not true. I have a very hard time seeing myself in any good light. Like, if I take one photo, I could probably pick out 20 things that are wrong with it. And I will probably never be fully satisfied, you know? And yeah, so I don't know. I just feel like that really hit home for me. I don't know about y'all, but so I guess a challenge to myself and maybe a challenge for you all is if you hear yourself or you think those thoughts of like really negative things, and you're like, ugh, why am I so dumb? Why did I fall for this? And why did I not say no? And why was I so out of control? Just try to replace it with something good. And that's going to be my challenge for myself this week is if I think like, oh, I'm so fat or I'm so dumb or I'm so slow and I'm like, I can't read well, I'll just try to replace it with something good. Like, hey, if I don't like something about myself, like I'm going to work on it. Or if I know that it's not really true, I'll just tell myself like, no, that's not true. What is true? Because I've had to do that with my daughter where she will be like, you didn't spend any time with me or whatever. And I'll say like, okay, what's true? And the truth is I actually spent 3 hours with her that day. She just feels like it wasn't enough. And we kind of have to do that with ourselves as adults, boys and girls, men and women. All of us need to kind of remind ourselves, like stop for a second and say something good to ourselves, because we are our worst enemies and we can completely destroy ourselves from the inside out, physically doing things and internally doing things that really hurt us. And we all have to work on being stronger because we want to be the people that we admire, you know? And so try to be your new best friend. It sounds like, oh, you're a psychopath. But it's not. It's just, you know, you're automatically going to speak bad to yourself and you're automatically going to feel doubtful and sad and depressed. So why not try to switch gears, you know? And you have to be really intentional when that thought comes in, like, oh, I'm so dumb, I didn't do this right or whatever. So like, you know what? I made a mistake, but I'm going to do better next time. I'm going to remember this. I'm going to try harder. Or, you know, next time I'll study a little longer, or I'll I don't know, I'll count to 3 before I speak so then I don't embarrass myself or whatever. And yeah, so let's challenge each other. Write down in the comments if you end up doing this, or maybe what your goal will be. But mine will be like stopping myself from saying something bad and kind of trying to switch up the sentence into something positive about myself so that I can grow and be better. And because like, who doesn't like being around someone that's positive and joyful and just have that like peacefulness about you? because I have people in my life that are just like, they seem so confident and just so graceful in life, and I would really like to be more like that instead of like dogging myself all the time. And I think like there is a good balance. Like it's okay to make fun of yourself sometime and just like have fun with it, because humor and laughter is a medicine in my mind. So I'm probably never gonna stop that like completely, of course, because like I like laughing about stuff. But I do want to work on like the real stuff that I'm struggling with, the real stuff that I say out loud about myself or that I say internally that's really damaging to my self-esteem. So anyways, it's been over an hour, so sorry. Hopefully I can edit it a little bit shorter, but yes. Goodbye, you all. Have a great day and be good to yourself.
Okay, this shirt looks so weird. Oh my god, the material. Lost my spot. Where are you? Antonami. The Antonami. The Antonami has two no.
Mechanical automaton. I don't know what that means. And I am not a mechanical automaton. Automaton. Okay. I was looking for my phone. I was like, oh no, where's my phone? Oh, I can't live without that. What if someone texts me? It's recording right now. Alright, back to serious. Okay, don't be looking fat now.
Whoa, okay, hold on. Whoa, why does it look weird? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Please hold. So satisfying. It's coffee and cocoa together. Anyways. Neither satisfy. Already, I cannot. I am
such a bad reader. It sucks. It really sucks. Lord, why? Like, help me out here.
I didn't even wave. Like, why is it starting already? I didn't even wave at the camera. Jizz, I wasn't ready. Okay, hold on. Hold on, please. Okay, my hair is not herring. Exactly. Okay. Okay. Let's go.